Good morning, everyone. Todd Zednick, President and CEO of Zedcor. Is everybody familiar with the story? Show of hands, maybe? New to some people? Okay, right on. Well, the fact that it's new, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. 2016, I rolled my company into a public company called Canadian Equipment Rental Fund. At the time, we were made up of an energy service company, and at that point in time when we rolled in, it was, they had a couple different companies. They had a general rents company, we had the oil field leg, we had a landfill division. 2017, we started to clean up the company. When we got in there, they had some internal problems, so I started out as VP of operations for the oil field side, and then I moved into COO and then became CEO in 2019, July. We sold off MCL, which was a landfill. We sold it to GFL. We got rid of the general rents company to a company called Cooper Rentals. That cleaned up our balance sheet and it gave the ability to move forward and build Zedcor. The big turning point for Zedcor at the point when we were at about 6 cents and times were looking pretty nil for us was we had the opportunity to get into security, remote security. And what that consists of was cameras on solar hybrid light towers out at job sites, deterring people from coming in, sabotaging equipment, stealing equipment. And we first started off on a couple major pipeline projects, the Apple Pipeline project between Calgary and Edmonton, and then Trans Mountain, which everybody knew about, that was in the media. A lot of protesting. We supplied the towers there. We got up to 250 towers. It was a great model. At that point in time, we had the oil field business left. Our balance sheet didn't look real good, but we sold it off in 2021. And then the balance sheet really cleaned up. We went from about 4.5 times debt to EBITDA down to 0.5. And that gave us the opportunity to start the birth of Zedcor, Zedcor Security Solutions. We rebranded the company, and what makes Zedcor today who we are is we're a turnkey solution. And what I mean by that, we evolved from the fact we were buying towers, putting cameras on, to now we build our own towers. 2023, I moved my family and myself down to Houston, started building a prototype. The business has evolved from once we started doing that. Prior to that, we were set up across Canada. We were in Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Ottawa, and Toronto. And as those two pipeline projects ended, they made up about 72% of our revenue in 23. It was great that we diversified while those projects were going. We opened up all the branches across Canada because as those slowed down, we moved all our equipment across Canada, redeployed it. And then we seen the need in the construction world in all different markets. Honestly, it's 100% customer agnostic. This business is, we watch swimming pools in Toronto for, kids' liabilities reasons, going in, graffiti, different things. We're watching car dealerships, the retail space, we're in there. Construction's massive for us now. The biggest thing for us is, when the stock really started to move, is we were labeled as an energy service security company in oil and gas. We managed to turn that around, expanding across Canada and now into the US. Our oil and gas exposure today is about 4%. We call it energy, which is about 9 to 10%, but that includes solar farms, windmill farms, all type of energy. I'll go ahead to the next slide, Wayne. Since moving to the US, we've expanded obviously into Houston. That's where we build our towers. We're now operating in Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Austin, Midland, Texas, Phoenix, Las Vegas, Denver. We're right now just in the middle of opening in Tampa Bay, Orlando, also Jacksonville, kind of up into Tallahassee. We've got people deployed in Tennessee, Georgia. We're opening up in the Carolinas. And we're pretty excited about it. We're going to be opening up in Sacramento, California before the end of the year. The tower count we're sitting at today is we're running about 1,300 towers across Canada, and we're just shy of 1,000 in the US. And the company's growing quite quickly. When we first got down to Houston, it was pretty wild to build this prototype, and we were pretty happy when we could build a tower a day. Right now we're building 40 towers a week. We've got our manufacturing situated right where we want it. We can probably, if we had to, step up and build 100 towers a week, but we've kind of got a platform running right now that where we're building our 40 towers a week and maintaining that. We've ran the company at about 90% to 95 to 98% utilization. This is the first time we've got the company in a place that The manufacturing's keeping up actually with the branches. All of our locations and our platform, and you'll hear me talk about the platform. What I mean by that is something that's cutting us apart in this industry is we're building a platform across North America. And what I mean by that is I come from a rental background, so I pride ourselves on service. You got to have people near your equipment. And all those cities I'm mentioning, we're opening up a small branch. Now, it's not a general rents company. We don't have to have like a United Rentals type business center. We don't have incoming traffic. Everything we do is outgoing. These are more docking, drop-off towers have 20, 30 at the warehouse. You have a small office, 3-4 offices, a couple salespeople, manager, and then obviously a couple delivery techs. Just to give a high level on how quick it can grow, we moved into Denver about 17 months ago, and we're just north of 210 towers, and it's growing rapidly there. The biggest thing people to understand, go ahead to the next slide, the biggest thing to understand how the whole process works is people probably sit and think that you're looking at all these screens. Well, to be quite honest, in 2017, that is what we were doing. We had 4 ex-cops sitting in a job trailer watching 4 TVs. We had about 20 towers out on a pipeline job. But the business has evolved so much from there with technology, AI. We have a monitoring center, for example, right now that it operates in Calgary, Alberta. We're opening up our second one in Houston. AI at the edge and the cameras has made it a lot better for us. So if you're sitting looking at your monitoring screen, what happens is there's a geofence that you can draw in that screen however you'd like to see it set up. And if anything breaks through that geofence, it sets off an alert, pops up what created the alarm, and then takes you, our monitoring staff, to a live view. Now then it gets escalated from there. What happens is if it's a threat, we can get on our talk-down speaker, ask the people to leave, they're trespassing, and if they don't leave, now we move in and phone the police. Something we get a lot is, the police will never come from different clients. Our largest client, D.R. Horton, in the U.S. was our first client that came on board with us. The fella, Fred, he said, you know what, Todd, I don't think the police will ever show up. In our first 10 nights, we had 3 arrests. The third night, they brought the dogs. We dropped their theft pretty much in half, and they were losing a couple neighborhoods over $1 million a year. We saved them $500,000 on guard costs, and we saved them $500,000 on theft. Now, one thing about the tower is it's also sitting there 24/7 compared to a guard. Now, if there's an accident during the day, our cameras are recording 24/7. We carry 30 days video. And we get a lot of clients that phone in and say, this just happened, can you do a video review? Our competitors, a lot of them, what they do is they supply them with the tower, but it's more like a doorbell camera at your house. You got to go back and look at the video. I'll go back to saying, you know what, Zedcor prides himself on service, and I believe you can have the best product in the world, but if you don't have service, at the end of the day, you got nothing. And when we move into a new area, we reach out to the detachments in the area, the police departments, explain what we do. They understand that, this isn't a false alarm. When we call in, we either phone 911, it depends on the area, or we phone the detachment. They then have the police cruiser phone our room back. We stay online with them until they get to the site. Obviously in the US, a lot of people are armed. We can tell the police, do they look like they're armed, how many there are. They pull into a job site. You can explain it, it's obviously dark out where they are. They're not walking into a blind site. It's been very successful that way. We're kind of like a big brother, eye in the sky for the police. Go ahead, I've covered a lot of this, but what makes us different, the biggest thing that makes us different is, everybody asks me all the time, why can't anybody go do this? Well, anybody could go build a tower, put cameras on it, and carry on and, try to do what we're doing. And there's other companies out there doing it. But one of the biggest things that they're doing is all their monitoring is done overseas. Philippines, India. The thing that makes Zedcor a difference, everything that we do is in-house, right from building it to monitoring it. I've always said in all of our town halls and everything, the heartbeat of our business is our monitoring center. It's a trickle-down effect. If our monitoring center misses something, that's where we get into problems, right? Clients unhappy. If you didn't have control of that as the leader of the company, I don't know how I'd sleep at night knowing that, this isn't at our fingertips to run and go through when there's obviously, we're not 100% bulletproof, but when we have a miss, there's a full investigation company-wide, top to bottom, what happened, and we're very truthful with our client. It was technology, human error. And that all goes back to that service side, being able to say that, right? And, I think it's key that part of our business is in-house, and that's really what makes us different. And And it's the platform, and it's the service, and every other part is, building our towers. And we named the company Zedcor Security Solution because we'll work with clients. If they need a different solution, we're not take it, this is how it is. We're not arrogant with clients. And, I think it makes us a lot different. Go ahead, Amin. This is just some of the macro backdrop. I think everybody's aware of how bad the world is today. There's the theft in the retail space is growing by, millions every year. A lot of these retailers are taking these towers, they like 2 of them in the parking lots, acts as a deterrent. We're actually starting to even deploy towers in the US for banks. In Denver, Tennessee, we've got 2 different bank franchises we're working with. Obviously you're not protecting the bank in the middle of the night. People aren't getting into the banks, they're locked up. But the one thing we're helping them with is all the homeless people. People hanging around the bank at night, people sleeping inside the bank machine doors or right at the doors, a lot of loitering. So we have an app in our cameras that we can set it for loitering. This guy's been hanging around for 10 minutes or more, or 5 minutes, and then it gives us the alarm, we call the police and deal with it. Another problem they have in the banking world is in the US, a lot of it's old school, it's still checks, a lot of fraudulent stuff going on. They find that the branches we put them at, the people aren't coming in and doing the fraud checks as much because they don't have eyes on the parking lot to get the license plate numbers. They just got eyes when they enter the banks or come up to the doors. Go ahead, Amin. This is obviously talking a bit about our growth. I'm going to pass it off to Amin. You want to come up and he'll walk you through some of the numbers?
Yeah, so the growth factor we've seen is a lot bigger than this. Just kind of gives the overall security industry. Obviously, physical security is just a piece of that, but a reason for the growth is better security solutions, cheaper security solutions. The cost of guards are going up, they're ineffective. And whereas a security tower, like Todd mentioned earlier, there's factors beyond the security that adds and kind of improves the nature and the cost effectiveness of the unit as well. In terms of our growth, we're just at over 2,300 units today. The plan to exit this year is kind of in that 2,500 to 2,600 units. Plan for next year is 1,800 to 2,000 units added to the fleet. We're going to be able to fund that with our cash flow from operations, and we're just in the process of expanding our banking facility. We've also seen the cost of the towers come down dramatically. Again, economies of scale as we start, as Todd mentioned before, we were doing 1 unit a day. Now we're doing 8 to 10, so that's kind of brought the cost down. We've also been able to realize economies of scale both with our camera purchases and our steel purchases, which has reduced the cost. So the increased bank facility that we're in the process of working with, and as well as the cash flow from operations, will fund the CapEx plan for next year. What that doesn't include is we have a lot of irons in the fire with some major retailers and bigger customers, so we might have to increase that CapEx from 1,800 to hopefully 2,400 or 2,800, but there's also conversations that some of these guys might buy the security towers. So we're still working out those, but we could comfortably say we can do 1,800 to 2,000, and we wouldn't need to raise equity, and the debt would be at a comfortable level as well. Just kind of the market opportunity we're seeing. Some of the investment banks we've talked to, they've verified this data. They have some other numbers. They've thrown around kind of that 400 to 600,000 sites. The research we've done is in that range as well, but we're constantly finding new use cases. This doesn't even cover all those, like Todd mentioned, some of the banks we're working with. Some of the other retailers, we're doing stuff with like logistics and warehousing companies, trucking companies, huge opportunity in that space as well, both in Canada and in the US. So this is kind of an evolving use case scenario, and we're just at the forefront of capturing some of that market share. Some case studies in here. We'll put this up on our website. There's an older version of this already on there, which kind of reiterates the case studies, but Home Depot and D.R. Horton we did case studies for, and the big thing to point out here is we moved away from a non-recurring rental revenue business where 2 big customers, Trans Mountain and Coastal GasLink Pipeline, dominated our revenue. They had an end date, and we didn't know where the next revenue stream was coming from. Whereas now the business is completely diversified away from that. Construction companies, we look at that as recurring revenue because they take us from site to site to site. D.R. Horton's an example where they finish a neighborhood, they'll take us to the next neighborhood, or they'll move us within that neighborhood. NMAX is another company in Calgary. They're a utility company. they have 10 to 12 sites on the go at all times, utility upgrades, new builds. So they'll take towers from site to site to site, and they'll keep those going. Just to talk about the margins quickly, one of our big objectives is to maintain those margin levels, and we've been able to do that. Q4 23 was the last Trans Mountain quarter. It recovered back to historical norms after that as well. So our goal is to maintain that 35 to 40% EBITDA margin. We keep an eye on the growth. We don't want to grow just for the sake of growing. We try to balance that, adding the salespeople with the manufacturing and the demand we're seeing. And eventually, about 2-3 years down the road, based on internal projections, we hit kind of an inflection point, and we're seeing that in Canada right now, where the G&A, the amount of money we're putting into G&A in terms of hiring new salespeople, building out the platform, that doesn't continue at the same pace as it is right now as we're expanding and growing out the footprint in the U.S. And that's reflected in our Canadian numbers as well. So that's our goal for the U.S. is to get those economies of scale and kind of either maintain the margin or maybe even grow the margin if we can. And then, do you want to wrap it up with the culture, or do you want me to finish that off? One of the big things we look at is the internal culture and kind of the external image we're projecting. A lot of that drives business as well. Happier employees lead to better results in the monitoring center, and that helps build our brand. As we get more customers, they refer other customers. They pass on the good word. A lot of the customers in the U.S. aren't used to the monitoring, so they don't believe it works. Like Todd mentioned, that D.R. Horton story. Once they start mentioning that to their friends and kind of building the customers, obviously that's driven by the results in the monitoring center. That's very important for us, and that helps reduce our costs as well, as we don't need as many salespeople. And a lot of the revenue in Canada is generated from repeat business or referrals from other customers, or they see the hardware, they see it on site, they see the imposing presence, they'll call and they'll say, hey, we need one of these at our construction site, and that kind of leads to that. These are some of the case studies we did. We mentioned the D.R. Horton one already. Home Depot was another big case study we did. This was done at the main and terminal location. They were measuring incidents, whether they were actual attempts of theft or employee harassment in the parking lots. This was one of their worst stores. London, Ontario is a pretty bad area for them as well. So we didn't add this in here, but they gave us some updated data about 3 months ago where they have about 3% theft loss in revenue due to theft. And at sites where we have these towers, that's either stayed flat or gone down a bit. And at sites where they don't have these, or stores where they don't have these towers, it's increased. So that's a big number for them. And given the cost of our units, it's a huge opportunity. They're expanding in Canada with us, and hopefully we can get some stores in the US for them as well. That's wrapping it up.